Hello lovely fairy tale friends and welcome to my new video. Today I am going to read for you Sleeping Beauty. I hope you enjoy it and subscribe my channel. Trumpeters blasted a joyful fanfare, and messengers rode out from the castle to proclaim the news. The queen had given birth to a baby girl. The happy parents barely had eyes for anything except their newborn daughter. "She's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen," cooed the king. "What shall we call her?" The queen gazed at the bloom of the baby's cheeks. They were as pink as the briar roses that grew in the garden. "Let's call her Briar Rose," she suggested. "A pretty name for a pretty girl," the king agreed. "Yes, it suits her perfectly." The king decided they should throw a party to celebrate, so he set about sending out invitations immediately. Anyone was invited. Briar Rose must have a dozen fairy godmothers, he declared. "You never know when a little magic might come in handy." So he sent out 12 extra special invitations. On the day of the party, a plush red carpet was rolled out for the guests as they flocked to the castle. Musicians struck up a merry tune, while acrobats leaped and tumbled among the party-goers, and conjurers amazed them with card tricks. Then they were shown to the dining hall, where they were treated to a fabulous feast. After the feast, the fairy godmothers gathered around Briar Rose's cradle to bless her with magic gifts. "Briar Rose will always be loving and kind," said the first, with a wave of her wand. "Her beauty will beyond compare," promised the second. "And her honesty will be unfailing," added the third. One by one the fairy godmothers gave their blessings, but the last was interrupted. "How dare you throw a party without inviting me?" came a shrill voice, cutting like a knife through the merry mood of the party. It was a wigged sorceress. She was wearing a storm-dark cloak, and her face was white with fury. "I have a gift for Briar Rose," cackled the sorceress, brandishing her wand. "Before she celebrates her 16th birthday, the princess will prick her finger on a spinning wheel and fall down dead." As soon as she had delivered her chilling curse, she vanished in a puff of smoke. "No!" wailed the king. The queen broke down in inconsolable tears, while the rest of the room looked on in horrified silence. Then the last fairy godmother spoke up. "I haven't blessed the princess yet," she said. "My magic isn't powerful enough to undo the curse, but I can soften its blow." She sprinkled magic dust over the cradle and gave her blessing. "Briar Rose will not die when she pricks her finger," she promised. "Instead, she and everyone else in the castle will fall into a deep sleep. Only a kiss from her true love will break the spell." Even so, the king didn't want to take any chances with his precious daughter. So as soon as his guests had gone home, he sent out orders for every spinning wheel in the kingdom to be destroyed. If she can't prick her finger, he reasoned, she won't come to any harm. As the years went by, the fairy godmother's wishes came true. Briar Rose grew to be kind and lovely in every way. Life in the castle was happy and carefree, and the princess reached her 16th birthday without coming near a single spinning wheel. Thinking they had managed to avoid the wicked sorceress' curse, the king decided it was safe to throw another party. The castle was a rush of activity as everyone prepared for the celebrations. The servants scrubbed the floors and polished the chandeliers until they sparkled and shone. The king sat on his throne, wrapping a huge pile of birthday presents, and the queen brought in great armfuls of fragrant roses from the garden to decorate the castle. Up in her room, Briar Rose was the most excited of all. This would be her very first ball. As she put on her rose-pink ball gown, she wondered what surprises the evening might have in store. The princess straightened her tiara and headed downstairs to join her parents. But on the landing, her eye was caught by a strange pale light. Bursting with curiosity, she followed the light along the corridor and up a narrow, winding staircase she'd never noticed before. The higher she climbed, the brighter the light became. At the very top of the stairs, she reached an arched doorway. Through the arch was a tiny attic bedroom. In the far corner, an old woman sat hunched over a spinning wheel. Briar Rose stepped into the room and greeted the old woman gaily. Of course, the princess had never seen a spinning wheel before, so she asked, "What are you doing?" "I'm spinning wool into thread," replied the old woman. "Would you like to try?" she asked, offering the girl her stool. "Yes, please," replied Briar Rose curiously. "Here," said the old woman, "let me help you." With an evil cackle, she forced Briar Rose's hand onto the sharp spindle of the spinning wheel. "Ouch!" cried Briar Rose, jumping to her feet. "I've pricked my finger." Suddenly she felt faint and dizzy, and the room seemed to spin around her. She stumbled back and fell, lifeless, onto the bed. Of course, the old woman was really the wicked sorceress in disguise. She waved her wand triumphantly and vanished in a puff of smoke. But the princess wasn't dead. She had fallen into a deep, enchanted sleep, just as the last fairy godmother had promised. Sleep fell upon the castle like a soft blanket. The king and queen slumped in their thrones, the guards started snoring at their posts, and the cook nodded off over a cake she was decorating. The kitchen cat became drowsy and let go of the mouse it had just caught. The horse dozed off in the stables, and the doves in the rafters stopped cooing and tucked their heads under their wings. One by one, sleep overcame them all. Even the clocks stopped ticking, their hands frozen at exactly the same time. But time didn't stand still outside. Gradually, a tangle of thorns took over the garden. Each year, they grew higher and thicker until the castle was completely hidden from the outside world. Across the land, the tale was told of an enchanted castle where a beautiful princess lay sleeping, awaiting a kiss from her true love. Princes came far and wide to see if they could break the spell. They tried to hack through the thorns to reach the castle. But the harder they tried, the more the twisted branches seemed to bind together. Eventually, the princes gave up trying. 100 years passed, and no one could remember whether the tale of the Sleeping Beauty was even true or just another fairy tale. Then, one day, a prince from a distant kingdom came riding by. His great-grandfather had told him about the sleeping princess, and he was determined to rescue her. Boldly, he approached the thorns. To his astonishment, they were transformed into rosebuds that sprang into bloom right in front of his eyes. As the prince stepped forward to pick a flower, the branches unwound themselves and opened up for him like welcoming arms. The prince walked forward and found himself in the castle yard. He peered in at the horses asleep in the stables, stepped over the cat and tiptoed past the snoring guards. In the great hall he saw the king and queen slumped in their thrones. Their crowns had slipped down over their faces. The prince searched for the princess all over the castle. At last he came to the stairway leading up to the attic room where Briar Rose lay sleeping. His heart raced as he climbed the stairs and entered the room. He gasped when he set eyes on the princess. She was so beautiful he could scarcely breathe. He stooped to kiss her. The very moment his lips touched her cheek, her eyes flickered open and gazed into his. "What's happened?" asked Briar Rose. "Have I been asleep?" "You and everyone else in the castle have been asleep for 100 years, replied the prince. "I've come to rescue you." And he told her all about the wicked sorceress's curse. Downstairs, the rest of the household was waking up and springing back into action. The servants continued scrubbing and polishing. The cook brushed chocolate cream from her face and got back to decorating the cake, while the king and queen sat up in their thrones and straightened their crowns. Briar Rose and the prince went down to the great hall. The prince told the king and queen what had happened. Then he got down on one knee. "Your Majesties," he said, "please may I have your daughter's hand in marriage?" The king and queen were overjoyed. "You have broken the spell and proved you are our daughter's true love," cried the queen. "What are we waiting for?" the king exclaimed. "This calls for a celebration." So he ordered a fanfare and sent out messengers to proclaim the news. The curse had been lifted. It was time for another party. If you liked the video, I hope you subscribe my channel. See you next time.